Hey everyone, my name is Austin, and I have some gloves on here because I'm going to be doing some repots. But first, I wanted to give a brief introduction. As I said, my name's Austin. I have a lot of plants, as you can see. These are actually plants that are for sale because I have a store where I sell these orchids. They're mainly Phalaenopsis, and my store name is Ardent Orchids on Etsy and eBay. But I've been growing plants my whole life, specifically plants outdoors and a lot of also common house plants. But really, my passion was outdoor plants, and then I sort of shifted into orchids about 5 years ago. And mainly, I grow Phalaenopsis, but I also grow Neophonetia falcata, some Cattleya, a couple Dendrobiums, and this channel is really going to focus on Phalaenopsis, specifically Phalaenopsis species and novelty Phalaenopsis, because they can be a little more difficult to grow indoors. But I just wanted to have a channel where I can explain what I do and what works for me, which, by the way, it may not work for you. Not everything is one-to-one for orchids. Everyone grows them different ways, but I just wanted to share my experience because this is what I do all day, every day, pretty much anyway. So I wanted to make a channel on that. And today I want to do a couple repots where I'm transferring Phalaenopsis that are growing in moss or moss and bark into tree fern fiber. And the reason I'm transferring my plants into tree fern fiber, specifically my Phalaenopsis, is because Phalaenopsis like moisture retentive media that isn't sopping wet, but if you're growing them at hot temperatures with good lighting, they really like to be moist but not wet. So the way I grow them is warm temperatures, good lighting, lots of airflow, good nutrients, and because of that, I like to keep my plants moist, constantly moist. I don't let them dry out. I don't keep them wet, but I definitely don't let them dry out, even in winter when it's cool. And that's just what works for me. So today I want to repot into some tree fern fiber, which I just re-bagged into a gallon bag. Usually I get the big bags, and then I've been experimenting with tree fern fiber for about 5-6 months, and I've gotten some great results. Let me show you. Okay, so this is a Phalaenopsis I've had in tree fern fiber since January, and I was honestly a little scared to repot it into tree fern fiber, but look, it's grown, I believe, this leaf right here and this leaf right here in 3 months. Only 3 months. It hasn't been super hot, but look at the root growth. So the root development has been really nice. Like I said, this is only 3 months. So for 3 months, about, I don't know, 10 roots already showing on the surface of the pot is really good. Let me show you another one. This is, by the way, this is Yang Yang Blue Baby Prince. It's like a really indigo or blue striped hybrid, which I really love the indigo purple blue hybrids. They're like my favorite Phalaenopsis. But yeah, this has been doing amazing. Super happy. And yeah, as you can see, it's starting to lean, but that's fine. They all lean. But let me show you another one. So this is a Gigantea I put into here. As you may or may not know, Gigantea is super finicky. They really hate repots. They don't like to be too wet. They don't like to be too dry. They don't like it too hot. They don't like it too cold. You really want everything to be very balanced with Gigantea. And this is, you can't really tell on camera, but it's pretty big. Not super old. I think I've had this plant for maybe 2 years, 3 years. But when I got it, the leaves were super small. So I don't know if you can see this one here. Not this one, the one underneath. It's actually tiny. It's maybe 3-4 inches, and then it went to maybe a 4.5 inch leaf, and now this is unfurling, and I think that this might be like 10 plus inches. I don't know. But Gigantea grow really slow and they're super finicky, and I actually have some root growth here and here, but when I repotted this, it was actually in a 2.5 inch pot, and I had to up it to a 5 inch pot, which most people say to only increase by like a 1/2 inch or an inch, but this plant was so root bound in a 2.5 inch pot that when I spread the root ball, it was maybe like this big. So it actually just fit in a 5 inch, and it's really loving it. No root rot. It's developing really nice. So yeah, that's 2 plants that I put into tree fern fiber, but I put about 6 or 7 plants just to experiment, because in my opinion, you should always experiment in your environment what works and what doesn't. For example, you may need to fertilize more, you may need to fertilize less, you might need more light than someone else, you might need more heat, more airflow, purified water. There's a lot of different factors that go into growing orchids, so you can't just really go based off what others say. In my opinion, you should try to experiment and see what works on your plants. With that being said, when I first saw tree fern fiber, it looked really dense. Let me dump some out so you can see. So this is the tree fern fiber. Kind of looks like dirt, but it seems really dense, but it actually allows a lot of airflow into the root system, which is great because it stays wet, but it doesn't get sopping wet, because if it gets sopping wet, it drains out the bottom. So anyway, I'm gonna dump this bag in here, and then we'll start repotting. All right, so here's the tree fern fiber. Sorry if you can't like perfectly see it, but it's like these little twigs, and it's from tree ferns in New Zealand where they're sustainably harvested, and orchids that are moisture loving literally love tree fern fiber in my experience. So let me go get the first plant, and then we can start potting. Alright, so this is the first plant that's going to be going into the tree fern fiber, and as you can see, it has a lot of spikes. Has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, not that many, but 5 spikes is pretty good. This is a Lutemanniana cerulean, and as you can see here, don't worry, I'm not going to snap the spike. As you can see here, this flower is wilted, so it's about to fall off, and this plant maybe had around 20 flowers. I don't know if you can tell the size, pretty mature, and it's been in moss for about a year and a half. Here is the root system, looks pretty good. It's a little hard to see, you'll see more when I take it out, but it has a keiki here, and the 2 flowers that are falling off. So, oh, this one just fell off. So yeah, I think that this will likely fit in this 5-inch pot. This is a 3.5-inch pot. I'm guessing it'll fit in here. I might need a 6-inch pot, and I know it seems like a big upgrade, but because the roots are going crazy in here, I might actually need a 6-inch pot. So before I start, these are the pots we're going to be using. I don't like the pots with the holes in the side. Although the orchids probably like it more, I prefer these because they only have bottom drainage, and roots can't just start growing out the slots in the side, which I can't. I just don't like that at all. So I go with this. It's a hard plastic pot, only drainage holes on the bottom, and pretty clear. So I'm gonna go with this. I have 5 and 6-inch pots of these. Let's see what the roots look like. Alright, so because I have a mic here, this might be a little difficult, but let me first get the ID tag out. And then, because I loosely packed this one, it should be easy to come out. There we go. So, set that to the side. And here, I'm going to try to show you guys. This is what it looks like. I see some root rot, which is not typical when I'm repotting. But because this was a fresh import from overseas, the plants were stressed. So root rot is pretty much bound to happen when they're coming from overseas, depending on how many roots were cracked or if it was repotted or anything like that. So this was in moss for about a year, maybe a year and a half, 2 years. I'm not really 100% positive, but I'm just going to start picking this moss off. And this is New Zealand sphagnum moss. When I first get the plants from overseas, I actually like to pot them up in moss, not tree fern fiber right away, because moss, in my experience, promotes the healthiest root growth and the most robust root growth. So I plant it in 100% moss, pretty lightly packed. Sometimes I tightly pack the moss, but as you can see, this moss is, I mean, it's still good. I could have probably left it in here for a year, but I do want to give it an upgrade and get some better leaf growth because the roots are very nice. So right now I'm just picking out all this moss. I don't know if it's hard to see, but it's alright. And I think I'm going to cut these keikis off. We'll see. But give me 1 second. I'm going to take all the moss out of the root ball. All I'm doing is I'm just taking the plant like this, and I'm just literally picking out the moss. So I'm going to pick out the moss, and then we'll come back and clean the plant up. Alright, so I've got about 98% of the moss out of here, but I want to show you this step because it's pretty crucial in my opinion. So the first thing is, because I packed the moss so loose, it's harder to unpot orchids when you loosely pack the moss than when you tightly pack it. Because normally what I would do is I would take a ball of moss like this, and I would roll it into a ball, and I would separate these roots down here. Let me show you. So I'll separate the roots like this, sort of. Just like this. Get them all separated. Trying not to crack as many as possible, because since Phalaenopsis are monopodials, they don't have storage organs, water storage organs. And cracking the roots, you want to avoid it if possible. It doesn't really matter, but if you crack the roots like in 5 spots, say, the plants typically don't like it. So right now I'm just separating the root ball, right? So I would take a ball of moss like this and put it right here in the center. I don't know if you can see that. Put it in the center, and then I would just wrap the roots around the ball like this. And then once it's all wrapped like that, you can just put it in a pot and pack moss on top. That way, you don't have orchid roots growing in the middle of the pot and to the side, and they're all tangled. You can kind of just have the roots grow on the outside of the pot. And also the benefit of that is they don't get too wet. Because they're on the outside of the pot, they don't get too wet, and they just absorb the moisture on the outside, and then the moss ball in the center of the root ball will stay moist. So it has access to moisture, but it's not getting too wet. Anyway, here is the root ball, and because this spike is so big, it's kind of hard to show, but I don't really see... Let me get this out of the way. There's not too many rotted roots. I'm just going to cut what I think will rot. So let me show you. Right here, this is definitely gonna rot. So although it's still hard, it was cracked. And you see down here, I can't really point, but the bottom part is soft, and then this is just the actual root sticking out. So I'm going to get rid of that. This root is soft all the way up, so what I do is, when it's soft all the way up, I just peel the velamen off like this. And now this root is just sticking straight up. I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, like that. And that way I can go all the way to the base and just completely get rid of the root. So I peeled the velamen off this, and then it gave me access all the way up the root so I could just get rid of it. Same thing with this one. This is completely rotted. So I peeled the velamen off, and then I just go in right at the base where the root started and clip it. And then I'm just peeling off the excess dead velamen on the roots, or roots that I think will rot. So here, sorry, it's really hard to show you because, okay, right here. It's hard to show you because there's so many roots, but this root is still alive, but you can see the root sticking out without velamen, so I'm just going to clip that. And then this root right here that I just cut the root off will either branch or it'll start a new tip. So and often you'll get these roots like this, where it's actually alive right here and hard, but here it's dead. So I'm just going to clip that off, just the dead part at the end. And the reason you want to get rid of the rotted roots is because you don't want the rotted roots to lower the pH in your pot and then just start spoiling your media faster. But I think that's everything. Let's see. Yeah, looks good. So this is now the root ball. I think a 5-inch pot will be just fine. 6-inch will definitely be way too big. So what I'm going to do is take one of these, move the, this is all the excess, so this is the moss and the dead roots. Put it over here, grab this, and for this repot, I'm doing straight tree fern fiber. I don't want anything else in there because typically I don't actually mix anything with my media. I do it straight because when you mix perlite or bark in between the tree fern fiber, it can't wick as well as it would if it was just 100% tree fern fiber. So I'm using only tree fern fiber for this. So what I'm going to do is spread the roots a little bit, just like that. And the reason I want to spread the roots is so that it has room, the roots all have room to breathe. So I'm just going to do that. And this is actually a perfect fit. And I see one more dead root. I'm just going to grab it, cut it. That was the dead root. So now I'm just going to position it in the pot. And actually, because this plant is used to moist conditions, this 5-inch pot's only going to last me 6 months to a year because it's going to completely outgrow the pot. So I'm just going to go to a 6-inch pot right away. Yeah, I'm just going to do the 6-inch pot because it's actually even taking up a lot of room in here. And because it's not going to be super tightly packed, it won't be problematic because it's not moss and it's not super tight. But in Taiwan, typically they don't pot over 3.5-inch pots because the way they pack the moss in general is a lot tighter than usually home growers can get away with because the plants will rot if you do that. But I'm just going with a 6-inch because I know this for this plant and my conditions, this will be just perfect. So as you can see, the roots are even still probably going to take this over, but this is perfectly fine. The roots take up about, I would say, 75% of the pot. So now I want to center the plant because the problem is if you don't center the plant, the roots are going to grow in a weird direction and then they're not going to ever be centered. So I want to center my plant and just start filling in. So I'm just grabbing a handful, putting it in, another handful in, and I usually do the front first, the front of the plant first, because it gives it more of like a anchor. And then I'm going to grab some over here, put it in the back. And I always want to make sure the plant is centered. So now what I'm going to do is get a skewer and just start kind of gently packing in the tree fern fiber, because I don't want to break the roots by pushing it really hard, but I do want it to be a good anchor for the plant. Because one thing is, when orchids are repotted, they hate being loose. So you have to make sure that the plant is fairly tightly packed inside the pot, because if it's not stable, it's gonna most likely get set back and take a long time to grow. So I'm gonna grab more, do this. This is gonna take a lot of fiber. Just tap it in, kind of move it over a little. If you're a beginner, I would recommend starting with a bark mixture. And I'll make a video on that. I would recommend doing charcoal, perlite, and a bark mix because it's super aerated and chunky and there's no guesswork. You kind of just water it whenever you see the roots are dry and you're good. Tree fern fiber and moss as a beginner is probably going to be a little difficult because you can't, with moss especially, the plant can't be too wet or too dry, but it also can't be too packed in or too loose. So it's kind of a little difficult to start off with, in my opinion. If you're a beginner and you want to get a plant or you have some Phalaenopsis, I would recommend using bark. So I'm just filling around here. Phalaenopsis like to have a really shallow pot or shallow potting. They don't like to be too low in the media. or you can potentially get stem rot. So you kind of want the plant to be above the media, which I'll show you at the end. And I always recommend to use gloves when you're repotting because moss can have some things, I forget exactly what it is. I think it's like a pathogen that actually can make you really sick. So whenever you're repotting, always wear gloves. When you're repotting, you kind of want the plant to have the least amount of media that can fit in the pot, because if you overfill the media, it's going to have too much access to moisture. So that's why I'm not actually going to fill this entire, I believe this is a 6-inch pot. I'm not going to fill this entire thing up to the top. I'm just going to kind of fill it to like where the stem starts. And I forgot to mention, this is a really good time to repot because the flowers are falling off and new tips are coming out of the stem. It's a great time to repot. Alright, so this is the final result. Like that in the center. And as you can see, right in here, there's no media touching the stem at all. That's what you want. You want to have a shallow potting for your plant. You don't want any medium touching leaves or stems. And that's it. That's the first repot for the Ludomaniana Cerulean. And I think it's going to love the tree fern fiber. And let's get on to the next. Okay, so this is the next one I'm going to do. It's Norman's Gold Coin Chang Yi, which is Lou's Gold Coin by Stewartiana. And this is in a moss and bark setup with perlite and charcoal. So let's get it out of its pot and into its new pot. I believe this is a 4-inch pot as well, so I think a 5-inch will be perfect. Let's see. This I haven't repotted for 2 years. And the reason I'm repotting this one is because it's just coming out of flower. I don't know if you can tell, but the flowers are getting wilted and they're a little turning brown and black, so they will all be off soon. And that's a perfect time to repot. So right now I'm just taking off all the media carefully. I don't want to crack too many roots if possible. Like I said, cracking roots isn't the end of the world, but when they're first imported, they're going to be cracked because of how they have to import them, but well, depending on the nursery and stuff like that, but yeah, I'm just trying not to crack them. Alright, so this actually has 0 root rot at all, which is really good. To me, that tells me that the plant liked being in a moist pot. So I'm just going to take all this off, spread out the roots so they're not choking each other. So yeah, I'm going to spread this out. Perfect. Alright, so that's the root system. There's actually no rot. The reason it might look a little brown is because tannins are in bark, which stains the roots, but none of them are soft, doesn't smell, and I think we're good to go in probably a 5-inch pot for this one, because I think this is a 3.5 or a 4-inch. I don't remember. Yeah, it doesn't say. Yeah, this will be fine in a 5-inch. So, alright, so Same thing. I'm going to position it in the center of the pot. And this one was growing a little crooked. So I'm going to try to get it in not crooked. And I just snapped a root, but that's because I don't want an aerial root. I kind of want to just put everything in the pot. So I did snap it in that case, but the root will be fine if it's snapped. You want to kind of try to prevent like snapping it in multiple areas. So right now I'm spreading the root ball out inside the pot, and I'm just gonna fill it the same way. So I'm just putting it in here, the front. I like starting in the front, although it doesn't matter. That's just how I do it. And I'm kind of just pushing the media in, not too hard, but you want to get it in place. And because this orchid was growing a little crooked, I'm going to kind of have to pack this in tight to get it to grow straight, which is fine. The thing I find about tree fern fiber is it works great for sensitive orchids like a Gigantea, or I have a selfed Javanica, and that plant, because it's selfed, is kind of has a little bit of issues. So I put it in the tree fern fiber, and it seems to be doing well. I just put it in about 2 weeks ago, but I already see a new root, so we'll see how that goes. Alright, perfect. This plant is in. I'm going to get a little bit more tree fern fiber to get some of these surface roots, but this is how it looks now. I don't know if you can see that, but this is how it looks. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I just wanted to show you guys how I repot in tree fern fiber, introduce myself on the new channel. I'm probably going to be posting a lot because I'm just going to film exactly what I do from day to day. But I just wanted to give you some more insight into some repotting tips, tree fern fiber, transitioning from moss to tree fern fiber, and stuff like that. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Let me know if you have any questions, or if you want to see particular content, just let me know in the comments. And until next time, guys, peace. Hope you liked it. Bye.